Welcome back to the channel. My name is Nick Dyson. I'm a Maxwell Leadership Certified Speaker and Coach, and going to be giving you my 5 leadership or personal development books for 2023, as well as a few honorable mentions. So let's get to it. The first 2 that I'm going to give you are more, in my mind, staples for personal development, personal growth. I'm going to give you one that's a little more nuanced, and then a good leadership book, and then probably the most recent book that I've read that is just my favorite overall. And I'll give you a few honorable mentions as well. So one of the classics I would consider for personal development, leadership, that kind of thing, is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. His whole premise for the book, you can find it on a TED Talk, and you can hear him kind of summarize it, but he wrote it as a book, and it is a fantastic book. But it is the whole idea of people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. It's the whole point of having your core values, your why. Why do you work in the area you do? Why do you care about people the way you do? Focus on your why for all of your actions, and people will buy in and trust you and follow you from that perspective. So I'm a huge fan of the book. I consider it a staple. It's something I've read a couple times and I plan to read again very soon. Highly recommend picking that book up and reading it. The second book that I will give you, and this is another one I consider a staple. It's one of my favorites. I've read it, I think, 3 or 4 times just in the past couple years or few years alone. I about do an annual read of this one just as a reminder. It's also one that I will do trainings on and speak on occasion through Maxwell Leadership. And that is The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John Maxwell. So this one, if you are trying to develop yourself or grow yourself, become a better person, a better professional, in whatever area of life you're working, there's the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. That is essentially a step-by-step what you need to do, what you need to focus on to grow and develop yourself. Again, I love this book. I think it's fantastic. I have training material on it, can speak on it, teach people, train it, talk about it all day long. I'm not going to bore you with all of that because there's way too much content for me to address here on one video. But this is a great book. I've even worked on developing a biblical application to this where I can address scripture in related to each law of growth. I heard this idea from a man who was an elder in his church in Alabama, and I met him and he has since passed away. But he gave me this great idea that he used it in teaching at his church and to train and equip people in his church. Me and him talked about it for an extended period of time. It was a huge help and really challenged me to look beyond just leadership or personal development as a category of its own, but look at it as spiritual growth or spiritual leadership development and use scripture in relation to all of those principles and be able to equip and train church leaders. That was a fantastic idea, and I've started doing that and making notes and studying it in more detail ever since. And it was kind of amazing to me, but he was spot on. He's completely right. When we look at Simon Sinek's Start With Why, as a Christian, what do you do and why do you do it? Well, it's because of Christ, and that should be your foundation, your why, and every other element of your why should stem from that. The same, the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. When you look at all the different laws of growth, there are Christian principles all throughout it, and you can connect it to Scripture and have that for training church people. So it's a fantastic book for that way. Now, the next book, this one's a little more nuanced. And I want to share it because I've read it, and I do apologize, my book's a little dirty. You might be able to see that on screen, but it is the new one by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game. Now, The Infinite Game is very interesting. It talks about, it's very business focused, so I'll preface with that, but it's the idea that we are not in life to win. To ultimately win, there has to be an end goal. And it is the concept that as a business, you're not growing to reach a certain level and then you win and you stop playing the game. That if we ever stop playing the game, then essentially our life is over and there's nothing else to it. But instead it focuses on the infinite game, which is the idea of legacy. Growing a business that outlasts your own personal life. Growing a brand or a persona or teaching, giving back to your community and people in a way that goes beyond who you are and your life here on earth. Now, again, very business focused, very legacy focused from a secular perspective. But again, if you address this from a Christian perspective, this is very true. It's what kind of life do you want to live and what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? I often hear preachers and people like that say that they want people to say at their funeral that they served God or they were with God, they walked with God, and that type of thing. That is the idea of legacy. That is the idea of leaving a legacy or something behind that goes beyond your life. An example of this, think of Billy Graham. Billy Graham is no longer with us, but think of all the things he left behind. All the speaking, all the information, the books, the legacy, the nonprofits that he started, all of the ministry aspects that he started that are still in operation even after he is gone. That is the premise of the infinite game, is starting and creating things that go beyond your life here on earth. So, the next one that I'll give you, this one's the leadership book. So that's the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. If you go and check out my short videos here on the channel, on TikTok, Instagram, that kind of thing, you will see where I do a quick summary of each of those. And I want to do book summaries of all of these as well and address the topics. But I have a short for each of the laws. They are either posted or are coming soon, where you can just get a quick 60-second or less idea of what the law is. But I highly recommend checking out that book because it will give you principles, things to look for, things to follow of how to build your leadership, grow your leadership, and become a true leader of influence. I would highly recommend this for anybody who is a Christian leader in ministry, church setting of any kind, pastor, teachers, that type of thing, because this will help you be a leader and lead your people well. This is something else that I'm more than willing to talk on and speak on because I love the book. I've read it a few times and will likely add this to my annual read or review type thing, and absolutely love the book. Okay, so let's quick before I go to my favorite one that I've read recently and quickly give you some honorable mentions. So John Maxwell has a new one that I've not read yet. It is just coming out, but it is Laws of Communication. That one is a great one that you can read and look at as well. You have Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. You have Winning the War in Your Mind by Craig Rochelle. I'm looking to the side because I've got it sitting over here beside me. And there's so many others that I could give you. Another great one, and this one's especially good for Christian leaders, especially for youth pastors, associate pastors, children's pastors, anybody who is not a senior pastor. But it is Clay Schrogen, I believe is how you say his last name. But it is How to Lead When You Are Not in Charge, or You're Not in Charge. And this book was a good challenge for me because in a lot of professional settings, you may not have a manager title. You may not have a leadership role or position, but that is something that you can look to and give you some advice and tips of how to lead when you're not in charge. And there's many other books that we could mention as honorable mentions, but if you want to find any of these, check the description down below on this video, and you will see there is an Amazon wish list for my favorite leadership personal development books. You can click that, go to the link, and all of these books will be listed there, and you can look at that. So, most recent, that is probably my favorite that I've read lately, is Atomic Habits by James Clear. This book, if you are looking to get into fitness, exercise, better eating habits, more sleep, work-life balance, work productivity, efficiency in your Christian walk of life, anything whatsoever. This is a secular book, but the things that James Clear talks about in establishing good habits or eliminating bad habits is fantastic. He has done a ton of research. There's a lot of science. There's a lot of methodologies. There is guides step by step. There's like worksheets, little ideas that you can go through. I've went through this book. It's covered in highlights and markings and ideas. It's a fantastic book, and I highly recommend picking it up for leadership, personal development, that kind of thing. Highly recommend the book. It is, again, one of my favorites that I've covered lately or read lately. So, I hope to do some videos that's kind of related to some of the premises in Atomic Habits, whether they be short videos or longer form videos, and give you some practical applications to those, but those will hopefully be coming in the future. Be sure to subscribe, like the video. That helps me out tremendously. Subscribe. I put out a new video every week on leadership, personal development, or some Christian-related topics. I hope to produce a lot more content for you guys in the future, and I hope you join me again next week for another video.